Okay, here we are with very little production. Uh, got my Sears brand Central hat, Chicago, from the stadium, quite a few years old. Um, yeah, I don't know what you guys want. You guys want the truth. I mean, you can't handle the truth, can you? Um, the truth of the matter is that I'm still getting high. For what reason? Maybe out of spite. Just rub it in your face. Um, you know that okay, you guys are going to hold out on me, I'm going to hold out on you, kind of thing. And I can't say that I'm getting less frustrated or more angry. I think it's about the same. Um, at times I do want to just kill everybody because this sucks. But I remember, you know, what what is at stake, maybe. Um, and I guess that's what matters. Um, I'm running out of time to be the father and the person I wanted to be. And I understand that. But this is rough. Um, I could trade in. I'd have no problem trading in any um, personal accomplishments or personal gains or rewards or finances that me being independent and running off and accomplishing my life dreams for the chance to go back in time and only have one family uh, and kids with the same mother and, and being married first and then having children. I would love to do that, but I can't. And I probably can't twist any kid's arm in the whole world to do that because they're going to do what they're going to do. But, you know, we can change what they see and what they hear um, by sharing a different message. If kids are looking up to artists such as Andy Lecrae and these kind of artists, if they're looking up to these artists and those lyrics are going to be that we should be with only one woman and we should honor her and we should not lie and um, we should know that the way up is down, stay low to the ground. And what he means by that is the way to heaven, the way to happiness in life is to stay humble and stay low to the ground and not have our egos completely inflated, which can incite anger and fear and make us be this tough guy, um, bullying people. That gives us attention, but it's the wrong kind of attention. You know, the people I wanted to hear in AA or NA, the people I wanted to hear early on were the guys that knew the book very well, that could recite it and that could, um, they could word for word say the book and what that was telling me was that they were very intelligent and they could give me so much. They had so much to offer. But as I as I got older and a little bit mature in the walls of recovery, um, the shares that I want to hear were the old men that were like, I wake up and I thank God for waking me up, and I ask Him to guide my day, and I ask Him to remove any selfish desires I might have that day, and better do His will. And before I lay my head down on the pillow, I thank God for another day sober. And they went to sleep. And I didn't listen to those guys, but those were the guys that had it together. Those were the guys that had 30, 40 years sober. And and so, as my story's unfolding, and there's been some hiccups, obviously, you know, the devil, the enemy, my disease, whatever you want to call it, it's always dressed up the same few lies every time to me. You know, that I need a woman to validate me, that I need uh, another person's validation or okay to make me happy. But what happens when that person's opinion of me changes? And and they might not react the same way I may react when my partner has fallen on their face. You know, in my eyes, I'd like to be there for my partner no matter what they've done to me. Um, but usually it's been me doing and, and inflicting the hurt upon my partner or family. So, you know, when when you think you've changed and then you realize that you haven't, and it's been being pointed out to you, or maybe you have, you just were vulnerable or whatnot. I didn't think I'd ever get high again. I didn't think I would ever blow another opportunity, but I did. And so there's glimpses of me thinking, oh, was that another door that God opened? I don't know, because now I don't have as much strength as I used to, or as much confidence, like Andy talked about, in myself, and so I'm afraid to go after it. And I know how God works because I've seen many miracles happen in my life, and so to think I'll be here in a room fighting my addiction, rebelling against everything, those thoughts wouldn't have crossed my mind. Um, I was in a home where I realized again that I sold somebody a dream. That although I wanted this happy family, was it with the right person? And I battled with it in my mind about my daughter, and what that was going to do to her again. And while I was in prison, I thought heavily about the time we were going to spend together, training for soccer, getting her ready for that, and also keeping myself in shape. Man, I thought about that often. And then now I think about when I go buy this soccer goal for her late birthday present, was the only thing I could think about is I'm not going to be there to use this with her, and can I ever? And and though I tell her mother that I love her as a person, which is the truth, I do love her as a person. Can I love her as an intimate partner? And that I have to say no to, and it sucks. And that's the part of me that wants to go back in time and reevaluate, and throw my selfish desires out the window, and probably would have walked away from her early on. Not because she wasn't a good person, not because she wasn't attractive, just because I don't believe that was for me. Um, I believe we get along. We get along great. We have things in common, but for some reason, I continually look other places, and if I'm honest with myself, I don't think that's going to change, and and she deserves better. So, um, you know, and when I finally get up off my ASS and do something in life, my daughter and I will have a great relationship, and I can be there to support her on things, um, financially and emotionally and physically. And I don't know what you want to call it right now, discovery, but one would call it laziness. Um, there's not too much that I don't know about myself. There's not too much I don't know about the disease. There's not too much I don't know about failure. Um, and then you look at the mother of my son. In the beginning, it was a fling. Yeah, I was not very sexually active, and 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 seeking it offline. So, and I wasn't too confident in myself to seek the women that I normally would be attracted to, um, or go after, the successful, good-looking woman, with little attitude. That would be my ideal mate. Um, I wasn't confident then. So, with all due respect, and I don't mean to offend you, the woman I chose, she was my son's mother. She wasn't ideal for me either. Um, but when I met her, and I noticed, that look in her eyes, and things that I could see in her eyes that were untold, that she would never tell anybody, um, I felt sorry. And so I used to tell her all the time, you've gotten better and better and more attractive as time has gone on. And then, it started, back then I had kind of vowed to not give up on it, to not cheat, to not do drugs, just not to be the person I was in the past, and in past relationships. So I vowed to do that. And did I really mean it? Yeah, I really meant it back then. And I cried leaving the neighborhood because my daughter was at the end of the driveway and wondering why her daddy was leaving again. And that crushed me. And I'm sure it crushed her. So here they are waiting patiently for me to return from prison. And I left again. And I left for that person that, you know, I really think that her heart wants the same thing I do, a family, um, uh, uh, functional family, um, you know, and so when I got these things going for myself again, or God did, He put people in my life to give me access to a new career right away, and I noticed friends were still distant. I didn't have any friends, and my sponsor used to tell me all the time. He'd say, "These people in AA and NA, they're not your friends." He said, "I mean, you might find one or two if you're lucky." He said, "But they're not your friends. They come here for the same thing, and it's selfish, and they want their recovery. I understand that. This is a safe haven for them." And but after thinking about that, he was right. When I quit, or whatever you want to call it, when I told my boss what was really going on, and he said, "Go get help," I noticed a few days later that people were dropping off on my Facebook. People might have answered the phone, but did they really care? And so I felt alone. I said, "Man, how can a whole recovery center just turn their back on one of their own?" Uh, and maybe they didn't. I don't know. I haven't spoke with them, but I know that people started to drop off of my friends list, and that kind of thing started happening. And so rewind a little bit. Um, when I was about a month before the new building opening, and my ex had my son's mother had bought me a car, and it took about 50 to 100, about $100 to get that car running. And I was so frustrated because I couldn't get the first part to fit, and we had to buy another part. And then I don't know which part ended up fixing, but we got it running. And 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 so everything was okay. But one thing she had a problem with was me online talking talking to the video, and then accepting women as friends requests. But it wasn't. I wouldn't say I was creating a brand, but you know, for me, it was. Um, I saw not many meetings were open. I saw where mental health and that kind of thing was headed, and many people saw it before me, but they weren't putting that much effort towards it. Uh, I it probably did more for me than it did for anybody out there, and I'll never know because I didn't get much feedback. But um, I did get some from one of my very good friends, Mark, and he said, "Man, I don't know where you went, but I used to wake up, get my coffee ready, and go to KB and see what the hell he had to offer that day." And so it started to hit me, and just random people, and some of the women that hit me up, yeah, they might have had different ideas of what we were going to talk about, but mainly, I did give in one time, and I began talking to one girl, and she wasn't the typical girl, but I would go in and out of the thought in my mind of just having sex, and didn't care who that was with. And so often I would try to reel that person in, and then I would back off, and they probably thought I was insane. I would schedule to meet and have sex, and then I'd back out of it. Um, but the son of my the mother of my son, she would, "You're just doing this for vanity. You're doing this for attention." And though those temptations were there, I don't think that I completely acted on that, like I normally would have back then. So, um, I think she was wrong, um, in as a whole, not in part. In part, she was right. There were some parts of me that, sure, um, you know, maybe there was some attention there, but my priority was to help people. And so, you know, there was a woman in my life that had been in and out of my life for years, um, that I probably had the most in common with ever, and that I could probably feel the most comfortable with ever. For some reason, she'll pop in my life at the wrong time. She'll pop in my life maybe the right timing for her, but not for me, or the right timing for me, not for her. Or I'll be in my addiction. And she's also a recovering addict. She'll be afraid to let me in her life, and for good understanding. I understand why. And so, here of late, well, I'll keep talking about that. So she would pick me apart, and I would take offense to that a whole lot. I would really take offense to being picked apart, and her trying to tell me about my relationship with God, or my understanding of the Bible, or my understanding of recovery, my understanding of, maybe she wanted me to go to all men's meetings. I would go to an all men's meeting, and I would come out of there, and I would message her and say, maybe you're right, da 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 da. But then, I didn't hold on to that idea, because really it was BS to me, because I only had eyes for one person, and I had made that commitment. Uh, and so time went on, and I started to mess up more and more and more. Mistakes were being pointed out to me, and I'm okay with that. But when you're with someone or someone says they care about you and it's not what you say, it's how you say it, you know. So, you know, you I guess you can point out anything to me, fine. But when you begin to notice that person is not going to be there when you're at your worst, you're like, I wasted all this time, you know? Like, neither one of them people would be there at my worst. And those aren't friends. Those aren't people you want to be with. I could understand this other person because recovering addict, okay? So for her to see a person in active addiction, sure, it's going to hurt them. It might make them curious. It might make them jealous. They might want to try. They might put a thought in their mind that they could use too. And so they have to keep me at bay. And so here's this other person that when I'm up, she's there. When I'm healthy, I have weight on me, I'm looking good, I have a job, whatever, I'm able to contribute, she's there. But when I'm not, she's not there. Um, then I have this other person that's there no matter what, that I can't find myself attracted to. And so that sucks too. Um, so when I started to fall and make the decision to get high, um, and then I couldn't control it anymore because, like any addict, it's a progressive and incurable disease, and it says it can, however, be arrested, and recovery is then possible. So what that means is that no matter if sober or in active addiction, in recovery or using, your disease is still progressing, um, or the enemy is still progressing. It's still at work. It's still getting stronger. It's still creating different ways it can trick you into its world and its control. And so, even though I may be recovering in a certain stage of my life, my disease is still there, as they say, doing push-ups, waiting for me. And in most times, and I believe wholeheartedly in my life, because of maybe what I have to offer, that it's working twice as hard to pull me back into that. Um, and I am really offended if some of this was planned to get me back into that, which I hope not. Um, because that's not cool. But for the most part, I think I made the conscious decision to get high, and so I have to own that. And so yeah, I did. And the hardest thing to do was to walk in or to call my boss over the phone and tell him that I had been lying to him a few days and lying to everybody, which I probably wasn't lying to anyone because they probably knew, because the therapeutic value of one addict helping another addict is without parallel. So it takes an addict to probably discover that. And I was walking into a establishment full of addicts. And I remember one kid looking at me the first or second day I came high to work. He's in the program. He's trying to get well. And he's looking at me and he's whispering to the girls. And I said, well, he knows right away I'm high. I can't hide it. I can't hide it anymore. So I broke down and I told him. And, I told everybody. It might not have been on their timing. But I told them when I thought I was ready. And that was the right thing to do. I couldn't come to work high trying to tell other people how to recover when I was struggling. And I had people tell me, why didn't you keep your job? You needed a paycheck. Well, one bad apple spoils the bunch. So how many people would I have taken out of there seeing me consistently come to work high? And And so I had to let that go. And so the next stage was recovery. But this whole time I had this pressure from my son's mother, this pressure, to get it back together right away, and this screaming of finances and everything that I hadn't helped on for 3.5 years. And my argument was, you had me locked up, but in reality, I played a role too, and got myself locked up. Um, and I felt that she felt bad and didn't think that I was going to get as much time as I received. And I believe that that was the truth coming from her mouth, that she never thought that I would get that long. Nonetheless, it done good for my life, and maybe a few others. Um, do I think that's the place to get sober? No. Um, is it a place for you to reflect and see what you've done in life? Sure. But it can be done at other places. Prison is for people that are really menaces to society. And I don't know if I was that, but at times maybe. And so then we got the phone call of my nephew, which was, I don't know if it was right on time or if it was too soon for my addiction. But that would be selfish for me to say. Like, nephew, I wish you would have got killed later on because it would have helped my addiction. No. Like, that call came in, and the initial call, I broke down, but I was high. It was hard for me to push any emotion out, but it came out, and it came out in the person that was around me, which was my mother. And then as the night went on, I didn't see it through my eyes. It appeared that the emotion, the uh, the mourning over him was not genuine coming from her. And again, it could have just been my perspective, but I know my mom, and it just didn't seem real. It seemed like they could cut it on and off. And so as the night grew, it got later and later into the next morning. I couldn't express any emotion anymore either, because I didn't see it coming from the person on the phone hearing all of the bad news. And then everything started rolling through my mind about technology and what could be changed nowadays, and what my ex was capable of, and all that started to roll through my head, like, this is not real, it's being fabricated. And my ex, working for insurance companies, life insurance companies, before I went to prison, my ex working in all the fields that spell out fraud, and the relationship that I knew that was taking place behind my back before I went to prison, while I was in prison, and after I came home from prison, that they were denying any type of relationship with each other, or I shouldn't say feelings, but I was led to believe they all hated each other and didn't speak, but that wasn't true. They did. And then came me still in my addiction, and me not being invited to the funeral. And I thought that was absurd. I could see, never before in the past did I ever come to something. Okay, I might have been high, and people might have been able to see me high or know that I was high, but did I ever act out in public, especially something like a funeral? I haven't been to too many of them in my life, but would I act out? They all knew I wouldn't. I think they knew that already, that he's not going to come and act and have a scene at his nephew's funeral. And seeing his nephew in the casket may have not trying to be selfish here, but it may have done something for me. You know, it may have woke me up um, to say, okay, this is real. Um, but in my eyes, it told me one thing, that it's not. Here's this person that's accusing it not to be real, that it just added fuel to it by saying you can't come, you can't see it. And and so I wasn't able to see it. And so that's with me. And the fact that I didn't get to say goodbye is a big regret. Um, and what would he have wanted? Would he have wanted me to be there no matter what? And I think he would have. And so, but it wasn't my decision, I guess. So I didn't go. So, that question runs through my mind all the time. So I stayed getting high. Then I noticed that it was kind of deliberate, me being told I was crazy and that I needed mental help, and that I was pushed into this. And but I couldn't keep my mouth shut, so I kept with these accusations towards my family. Now, if I was wrong, I'm really sorry about that. But if I'm right, then all these things were for a reason. It only makes sense. So if I was right with my accusations, then then they wouldn't want me to come to the funeral and see the truth. They would want me pushed to clinically insane, which my mother picked up the phone one day and called the police and had them come arrest me and bring me to a hospital. The hospital, I don't know. They didn't know what to think. But the next day I get released. Nothing ever happened. And then, this took weeks down the road where I looked back on that paperwork and like there was 3 appointments that I never knew were made, and I never knew um, that were going to happen. And 2 of them were in home, and it never happened. And so some of those things I think were billed, and I just started to notice that kind of thing. And then the certain people that were placed in my life to help me were from the same group of people. And then I was put into a halfway home where people were deliberately antagonizing me. I've never been part of that situation before. I've been at many halfway homes, many recovery centers, and they've always been, how is your recovery going? Do you have a sponsor? How does that look like? You need to talk about anything. I would get that from a few individuals from time to time there, but not the people that were running the building. And it just seemed like this secret thing. And since I wasn't, and since at times I would speak out and expose my thoughts, or and express my thoughts and maybe expose what was going on, they would all get really mad at me, and they would tell people that this isn't working, and I didn't, and I'm in my head like, yeah, I'm not conforming to this, this isn't me. At times I would say, what would I say? I would say, play dead or break bread or something like that. Like, um, put me on the team or get rid of me kind of thing. I would say that, but I was only saying that as a reverse psychology kind of thing. That if you let me in, I was going to destroy it anyway. So they never let me in to whatever may have been going on. But it didn't seem right. So I left there. I was kicked out, actually. This old man kept pushing my buttons. He was saying the craziest things to me that only really my mom gets away with. And he was 60-something years old, so I wasn't going to put my hands on him. But it got to that point, and glad I got out of there. So, um, this whole time I had these different thoughts about the mother of my son. And, you know, it wasn't there. The the reason she learned the Bible maybe had started off for her own life and for her children's life, and to be that light and to change her ways. And I'm not judging her, um, but she changed along the way too. Um, so I don't know if it was just to get me back, but I know 30 days after being released from prison, when I couldn't take it anymore from not seeing or hearing my son, I broke down and called her, and she screamed and yelled at me for not contacting her earlier. And then I hear about this walk with God. And so I test it. We talk about the Word of God and stuff, and it was there. The knowledge was there. But then I found out an ex was in her life that knew a lot about it too. So my mind was like, okay, well, he taught her. Um, you know, I was trying to discover all these things of why. And so I fall off with my walk with God, and I start to kind of notice that wasn't who she was, maybe. Or maybe she fell off because I fell off. I don't know. But it seemed that way. And then, all these things with family and me, or family and her, and just things I found on the internet. The various accounts of me across the United States. Uh, my sister's man, um, my mother of my son, the location of my nephew's murder, the different obituaries in different places in that state. It just didn't add up. Um, just a lot of things. I spent hours and hours and hours on it. And I stayed in my addiction because of it. I couldn't hold a job because of my addiction. I couldn't hold a job because of the doubt of the people around me. If they were telling the truth. And out of love for my nephew, and